Welcome to my Thailand stories. This one's going to hit you hard where it hurts, so keep your ears open and stay alert. Today we hear from a boat captain from Portsmouth who spent 28 years on the water, understanding vessels and maritime operations better than most people understand their own families. When he found a charter boat partnership in Hua Hin, every instinct told him it was legitimate. The boats were real. The woman knew the water like he did. But sometimes passion blinds us more effectively than ignorance ever could. Here's his story. I'm Andrew. I'm 46 and I stood at an empty boat slip in Hua Hin Marina staring at the water where two boats used to be. My boats. Except they weren't my boats. They never were. The fishing boat and the speedboat I'd inspected. The vessels I'd taken out on charters. The equipment I'd checked with 28 years of maritime experience. All of it belonged to someone else. Kanya wasn't answering her phone. The lawyer's office was empty, and £68,000 of my life savings was somewhere in Thailand with people I'd never find. Let me tell you how they did it. I've been working on boats since I was 18. Started as a deckhand on fishing vessels off the south coast of England. Earned my skipper's licence at 25. For the past 15 years I've been working as a charter boat captain in Portsmouth. I run fishing charters, private cruises, corporate events. I know boats, I know the water. I know how charter businesses operate. It's not just my job, it's my life. It's who I am. By early 2024, I'd saved approximately £75,000. I've been living modestly in a small flat, saving every spare pound, with the dream of eventually owning my own charter boat business. The problem was that in the UK the costs were astronomical. A decent charter boat would cost £150,000 or more, plus mooring fees, insurance, maintenance, licenses. Even with my savings, I was nowhere near being able to afford it. I'd been to Thailand once before, about 8 years ago, diving holiday in Phuket. I remembered seeing charter boats operating there and wondering what it'd cost to run a business like that in Thailand. In February 2024, I decided to take 3 weeks off and explore the possibility more seriously. I wanted to visit different coastal areas, talk to boat operators, see if there were realistic opportunities for someone like me. I flew into Bangkok and then took a bus down to Hua Hin. I'd heard it was a popular beach town. Less chaotic than Pattaya, good mix of Thai and expat residents. I checked into a small hotel near the beach and started exploring. The town was pleasant. Long beach, fishing piers, seafood restaurants, relaxed atmosphere. I spent my first few days just walking along the waterfront, watching the fishing boats come and go, getting a feel for the place. One afternoon I was at the fishing pier, watching boats unload their catch when I saw her. Thai woman, maybe mid-30s, wearing board shorts and a faded blue tank top. Hair pulled back in a ponytail, tanned and weathered from the sun. She was directing the unloading of a fishing boat, calling out instructions in Thai, moving with the easy confidence of someone who'd spent their life on the water. She caught me watching and smiled. Said in English, "You know boats?" I laughed. Said, "Yeah. Been on them most of my life." She said she could tell. She said most tourists just took photos, but I was watching how they were handling the lines, how they were securing the catch. She said only someone who knew boats would notice those details. Her name was Kanya. We started talking, standing there on the pier with the smell of fish and salt water. She said she ran a charter boat business with her brother. 2 boats, a fishing boat and a speedboat. She said she'd grown up on the water. Her father had been a fisherman. She'd been captaining boats since she was 17. I was impressed immediately. She knew her stuff. Really knew it. We talked for over an hour about boats, about fishing, about the differences between Thai and English waters, about tides and currents and reading the weather. The kind of technical conversation I never got to have outside work. She asked what brought me to Hua Hin. I told her I was a boat captain from England, that I was exploring business opportunities in Thailand, that I was interested in possibly investing in, or partnering with, a charter boat operation. Her eyes lit up. She said that was interesting. She said her biggest challenge was capacity. She and her brother owned 2 boats, but they could only run one at a time because they were the only 2 captains, which meant the second boat sat idle most days. Money sitting in the water doing nothing. She said if they had a partner who could captain one of the boats, they could double the revenue. Simple math. I was immediately interested. This was exactly the kind of opportunity I'd been hoping to find. And Kanya seemed like a genuine mariner. Not a businesswoman trying to sell me something. She was explaining a real, operational problem that I could solve. She said if I was serious about exploring it, I should come see the boats, see the operation. No pressure. Just if I was interested. I said I was very interested. The next morning, Kanya picked me up from my hotel in a white pickup truck. She was wearing the same board shorts, different tank top. This one grey with a faded boat logo. She drove to a small marina about 10 minutes away. Maybe 30 boats moored in slips. She parked and walked me down to where the boats were tied up. Both boats looked well maintained. Really well maintained. The fishing boat was a solid-looking vessel with outriggers, rod holders, small cabin. The speedboat was sleek and modern with a powerful outboard engine. I walked around both boats, checking the hulls for damage, the engines for leaks, the equipment for wear. Everything looked legitimate and well cared for. These were real working boats. Kanya invited me aboard the fishing boat. We sat in the cabin. She showed me her booking records, maintenance logs, photographs of recent charters on her phone. She had a notebook full of customer details, dates, payment records. Everything looked organised and professional. She said her average charter brought in 8,000 to 15,000 baht, depending on the length and type. She said during high season, from November to April, she could do 20 to 25 charters per month with one boat. If they had 2 boats operating, they could potentially do 40 to 50 charters per month. I did some quick mental math. If they averaged 12,000 baht per charter and did 45 charters per month, that was 540,000 baht per month, roughly £12,500. Split between partners, that'd be solid income. Better than anything I could afford to start in Portsmouth. I asked Kanya what she was proposing. She said she and her brother were looking for a partner who could captain one of the boats and help expand the business. She said the partner would need to invest capital to formalise the partnership and cover some operational upgrades. She said she was thinking around 3 million baht, roughly £70,000. That'd give the partner a third ownership of the business, including both boats, all equipment, all existing bookings and customer relationships. I was intrigued but cautious. I told Kanya I needed to think about it and do some research. She said absolutely, no pressure at all. She said I should take my time, maybe even go out on a charter with her to see the operation firsthand, see it with my own eyes. She said she had a booking the following morning for a fishing charter with a British couple. She said I was welcome to come along as her guest and see how it worked. I accepted the invitation. The next morning, I met Kanya at the marina at 6 o'clock. The British couple arrived shortly after. They were in their 60s, friendly and excited about the fishing trip. Kanya introduced me as a friend visiting from England. We loaded the gear, cast off, headed out to sea. It was a perfect morning. Calm water, clear sky. And Kanya handled the boat expertly. I watched everything she did. How she read the water, how she positioned the boat, how she handled the rods. She knew what she was doing. Not just competent, skilled, natural. We fished for about 4 hours. The couple caught several decent-sized fish. Kanya was attentive, helpful, professional throughout. She knew the waters, knew where the fish were, made sure her customers had a great experience. At the end of the charter, the couple paid in cash and gave Kanya a generous tip. They said they'd recommend her to their friends. On the way back to the marina, I talked with Kanya about the business. I asked about licenses, insurance, legal structure. She said all the boats were properly registered with the Thai maritime authorities. She said she had commercial operator licenses and insurance. She said the business was registered as a Thai company. If I became a partner, they'd formalise the ownership through a shareholder agreement. She said foreigners couldn't own more than 49% of certain businesses in Thailand, but a partnership structure could be set up legally. Over the next few days, Kanya and I spent more time together. We had dinner one evening, small seafood restaurant on the beach, plastic chairs, cold beer, fresh grilled fish. We talked for hours, not just about boats, about life. She told me about growing up on the water, about losing her father to a storm when she was 19, about taking over his boat, about building the business with her brother, about loving the sea but sometimes feeling lonely. I told her about my life in Portsmouth, about working on other people's boats for 28 years, about dreaming of owning my own operation, about time running out. She reached across the table and took my hand. She said, "Maybe this is meant to be. Maybe we're supposed to help each other." I kissed her that night. in the parking lot next to her truck, with the sound of the ocean and the smell of salt water. She kissed me back. Over the next week, our relationship deepened. We spent every day together, sometimes on the boats, sometimes at her small house near the marina, a wooden place with a deck overlooking the water. We'd sit there in the evenings, drinking beer, talking about expanding the business, about me moving to Thailand, about us building something together. She said she was falling for me. I said I was falling for her too. Meanwhile, I was researching everything. I looked at what other operators were charging, what kind of boats they used, what the demand was like. Everything Kanya told me seemed accurate. I also checked online reviews for her business. She operated under the name Hua Hin Fishing Adventures and had positive reviews on several travel websites. Customers praised her professionalism, her knowledge of the waters, the quality of her boats. I contacted Kanya and told her I was seriously interested, but I wanted to have the arrangement reviewed by a lawyer before I committed any money. She said absolutely. Very professional response. She recommended a lawyer named Presut who was based in Hua Hin and specialised in business partnerships involving foreigners. I was initially hesitant about using a lawyer recommended by Kenya, but Presut had good reviews online. His office was in a legitimate building in the town centre. I decided to meet with him. Presut was a Thai man in his 60s, wearing a formal shirt and glasses, looking every bit the respectable lawyer. He spoke reasonable English. He explained that structuring a business partnership with a foreigner required careful legal work to comply with Thai law. He said the most common approach was to create a Thai limited company with specific shareholder agreements that protected both parties' interests. He said his fee would be 50,000 baht, about £1,200, to handle all the legal work, including drafting the partnership agreement, the shareholder agreement, registering the changes with the Thai authorities. I hired him and asked him to proceed. Over the next 2 weeks, Presut prepared all the documents. The partnership agreement outlined the investment amount, the ownership split, the profit-sharing arrangement, the operational responsibilities of each partner. I reviewed everything carefully with the same attention I used checking a boat before taking it out. It all seemed proper and legally sound. Presut explained each clause and answered all my questions. He said once I made the investment payment and we signed the agreements, I'd be registered as a shareholder in the company that owned the boats. I signed the agreements. Kanya signed as well. Her brother Boonmi signed too. I'd met him briefly. Quiet guy. 50s. Didn't say much. Just nodded and signed. Presut witnessed the signatures. Said he'd register everything with the appropriate authorities. The final step was to transfer the investment amount. Kanya provided the company bank account details. I transferred £68,000 from my UK bank account, about 2.9 million baht. The transfer took a few days to complete. Once Kanya confirmed receipt of the payment, she welcomed me as her partner. She hugged me, kissed me, said we were going to build something amazing together. She said they'd already started taking bookings for the second boat. I could begin captaining it as soon as I was ready. She said I needed to get a Thai boat captain's license, which would take a few weeks. But in the meantime, I could go out with her and familiarise myself with the local waters. I was thrilled. I felt like I'd finally found what I'd been looking for my entire adult life, a legitimate charter boat business, in a beautiful location, with a knowledgeable partner, a woman I was falling in love with, and boats that were ready to operate. I extended my stay in Thailand and started working with Kanya every day. We went out on charters together. I learned the routes, the fishing spots, the procedures. Everything seemed perfect. Over the next 2 weeks, I went out on multiple charters with Kanya. We took tourist fishing. We did private island tours. We even did a corporate event for a group of expats from Bangkok. Everything was going smoothly. Customers were happy. The boats performed well. I felt confident that I'd made a smart investment, the best decision of my life. Then one morning, I arrived at the marina to find both boats gone. The slips where they'd been moored were empty. Just water. I called Kanya immediately. Her phone went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. I sent her messages online. No response. I went to her house. It was locked. No one answered. I felt panic starting to build in my chest like water filling my lungs. I went to the marina office and asked the staff if they knew where the boats were. One of the workers said in broken English that the boats had been moved early that morning. He said they'd been told the boats were going for maintenance. He didn't know where they'd gone or when they'd be back. I asked if this was normal. He shrugged, said sometimes boats went away for a few days for repairs. I tried to stay calm. Maybe there was a legitimate explanation. Maybe Kanyad needed to take the boats for urgent maintenance and hadn't been able to reach me. But as the hours passed with no response to my calls or messages, I started to feel that something was very wrong. By evening, I still hadn't heard anything. I went to Prazert's office, the lawyer who'd handled the partnership agreements. When I arrived at the building, I went to the floor where his office had been. The office was empty, completely vacant. No furniture, no signs, nothing. Just bare walls. I went back downstairs and asked the building receptionist what had happened to Prazert's office. She checked her records, said the tenant had vacated about a week ago. They'd been on a short-term lease, left without much notice. No forwarding information. I felt sick. My hands were shaking. I went back to the marina and asked more questions. I asked the marina manager if Kanya had been renting the slips or if she owned them. The manager said she'd been paying monthly for the slips, but hadn't renewed her contract. He said her last payments had covered her through the end of the previous week. He'd assumed she'd renew or move the boats elsewhere, but he hadn't heard from her. I asked if the manager knew who actually owned the boats. He said he didn't know. He said Kanya had presented documentation when she first started renting the slips, but he didn't keep copies. He suggested I check with the Thai maritime authorities to see if the boats were registered in the company name. I went to the local office of the Marine Department the next day. I explained the situation and asked if they could look up the registration for the two boats. I provided the boat names and registration numbers that I'd noted down during my time on the vessels. The officer checked the database, said the boats were registered, but not to the company Kanyad claimed to own. They were registered to a different individual. A Thai name I didn't recognise. The officer said it appeared the boats didn't belong to Kanya at all. He said it was possible she'd been renting or borrowing the boats from their actual owner, or she might have been using them without permission. Either way, the boats I thought I'd just bought a stake in weren't owned by the company I'd invested in. They belonged to someone else entirely. I felt like the world was collapsing around me. I'd been scammed. Everything had been fake. Kanya didn't own the boats. Boonmi was her accomplice. Prazert was part of the scam. The partnership agreements I'd signed were worthless because they were based on the false premise that the company owned assets it didn't actually own. My £68,000 had been transferred to a bank account that existed only to receive my money before disappearing. But the worst part wasn't the money. It was Kanya. I'd fallen for her. I'd imagined a future with her, building a business together, a life together, on the water, doing what we both loved. Every conversation on her deck, overlooking the marina, every charter we'd run together, every kiss, every moment. It had all been part of the performance. She'd used my passion for boats, my loneliness, my dream of owning my own operation, and she'd weaponized all of it. I went straight to the police station in Hua Hin, tried to explain what had happened, my voice shaking. The officer who spoke the best English took down my information, reviewed the documents I'd brought, the partnership agreements, the bank transfer receipts, the boat registration numbers, everything. He listened carefully, said cases like this were becoming more common in coastal tourist areas. He said scammers would rent or borrow boats, pose as owners, target foreigners who had maritime experience and capital to invest. He said the scammers knew that people with boat experience would evaluate the vessels and the operations, so they made sure everything looked professional and seaworthy. They made it perfect for people like me. The officer said recovering the money would be extremely difficult. He said Kanya was likely using a false identity. The bank account I'd transferred money to was probably opened with fake documents. He said they'd investigate, but he was brutally honest with me. The chances of finding her or recovering the funds were very low, almost zero. He gave me a police report number, said I should contact the British Embassy. I went to the British Embassy in Bangkok a few days later. The consular officer I met with was sympathetic but realistic. She'd clearly given this speech before. She said boat charter scams weren't uncommon in Thailand's coastal areas. She said scammers would temporarily use boats that didn't belong to them, create the appearance of a functioning business, target foreign investors who had industry experience. She said most victims never recovered their money because the scammers operated under false identities and moved funds out of Thailand quickly. She gave me information about Thai lawyers who specialised in fraud cases, but warned me that pursuing legal action would be expensive with little chance of success. I spent another week in Hua Hin trying to find any trace of Kanya or Boon Me. I went back to the fishing pier where I'd first met her. The workers there said they knew her, but only as someone who occasionally brought boats to the pier. They didn't know where she lived or how to contact her. They said they hadn't seen her in over a week. I searched online for Hua Hin Fishing Adventures, the business name she'd used. The website was now offline. The social media pages had been deleted. The positive reviews I'd seen on travel websites had vanished. It was as if the business had never existed. I flew back to England completely devastated. I'd lost £68,000, most of my life savings, the money I'd planned to use to eventually buy my own boat, the financial security I'd built over decades of hard work on the water. It was gone, but worse than the money was Kanya. I'd fallen for her, not just as a business partner, as a woman, as someone who understood the water like I did, as someone I could build a life with. And it had all been a lie, every smile, every conversation about the future, every evening on her deck, every charter we'd run together. It had been calculated, planned, part of the scam. She'd used my passion, my expertise, my loneliness, and she turned all of it against me. I went back to work as a charter boat captain in Portsmouth, but everything felt different. I was working on someone else's boat, making someone else money, with no prospect of ever owning my own vessel. The dream I'd worked toward for 28 years was dead. I was 46 years old, with almost no savings and no path forward, except to keep working until I was too old to captain boats anymore. The psychological impact was devastating. I'd always been confident in my ability to evaluate boats and maritime operations. It was my expertise, my life's work, my identity. But I'd been completely fooled by people who understood how to exploit that expertise. They knew I'd checked the boats carefully, so they used real, well-maintained vessels. They knew I'd want to see the operation firsthand, so they staged convincing charters. They knew I'd look for positive reviews, so they created fake online presence. They anticipated every check I'd make and prepared false evidence to pass those checks. And they knew I was lonely, looking for connection, looking for someone who understood the water like I did. So they gave me Kanya, a woman who spoke my language, who shared my passion, who made me believe we could build something together. It's been over a year since the scam happened. I'm still working as a charter boat captain in Portsmouth. I've managed to save about £4,000, but it feels meaningless. At 47 years old, I'll never be able to save enough to buy my own boat. The dream I worked toward for 3 decades is gone. I'll be captaining other people's boats for the rest of my working life. £8,000. That's what it cost me to learn that the woman who handled the boat like she'd been born on the water, who kissed me under the stars and talked about building a future together, was a professional con artist who knew exactly how to make an expert believe he couldn't be fooled. That's my story. I handed over my entire life savings to a woman I loved and boats that were never mine. I hope sharing this prevents someone else from doing the same. That was Andrew's story, and it hits hard to the bone. A man who spent his entire life on the water, who knew boats better than most people know their own homes, who checked every detail with 28 years of professional expertise, and still lost everything, because the scammers didn't challenge his knowledge. They confirmed it. They showed him exactly what he expected to see and gave him exactly who he wanted to find. Thanks for sharing your story, Andrew. This is My Thailand Stories. Stay safe out there.